The following program is a production of WMFE, Orlando, Melbourne, Daytona Beach.
A growing Central Florida is demanding more water.
We have so many people moving to the area all the time, and I guess our natural water supply can't keep up with it.
With sprinklers feeding thirsty lawns on virtually every street, water quietly fuels a big part of our way of life.
It becomes a more and more expensive commodity that we cannot live without.
All told, Central Floridians use 6.5 million gallons of fresh water a day. Enough to fill Orlando's SunTrust Tower more than 330 times. But as the region's collective water meter keeps turning, the clock is ticking.
The Water Management District is telling us that we have less than a 5-year sustainable supply of water. Yeah, that's a crisis in our book.
Competing forces are straining the limited supplies we have left.
Local governments approve the growth that occurs within their areas, so that obviously is creating a demand for water.
Now, controversial solutions are on the table as utilities eye new sources to quench our thirst.
As we have to develop those sources, it is likely that the cost of new water is going to go up.
This is about money and power, and water is power.
We may not run out of water, but it's clear our choices now will have widespread consequences.
We're not crying wolf. This is a potentially very serious situation.
We're already starting to see environmental impacts, particularly in Western Orange, Western Osceola.
So who or what will pay the price of our thirst?
Support for This Week is provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to WMFE from viewers like you. Thank you.
This patchy lawn in Longwood is a sign of the Williams family's priorities.
We only water our lawns, actually probably less than the 2 times a week they allow. Because we are concerned about, the lack of water and, conservation.
To be extra cautious, Sherry Williams also turns her faucet on and off while she does the dishes.
Even when I'm brushing my teeth, I never let it run.
While the Williams family takes small steps to save water, it's clear they live in a community with a supply that's on the verge of being maxed out.
We have a very large demand for water. It's ever growing in Central Florida.
Hal Wilkening is part of the St. Johns River Water Management District, the agency that's in charge of most of Central and North Florida's water supply. He says trouble is on the horizon in less than 5 years.
While in Central Florida we have enough water right now to meet the demands, when we project the demand for water in the future, we've concluded that there will be a shortfall of water if everybody just continues to pump more and more groundwater from the aquifer system.
The Floridan Aquifer is where 90% of Central Floridians get their water. It's a deep underground natural reservoir that's quenched the region's growing thirst since it earned a place on the map. But in 2013, regulators will say no more new withdrawals.
Largely the reason is we're to the point now where we're starting to deplete surface water systems such as wetlands, lakes, streams, and causing environmental damage on the surface by drawing down that aquifer.
Lake levels are already visibly down in some areas. But it's not just an environmental problem. Overextending the aquifer can compromise drinking water for everyone who uses it. As the freshwater aquifer is emptied, salt water can get in, contaminating the water supply.
Once we start seeing saltwater intrusion, that's pretty much it. You just pretty much have to abandon those well fields.
While rain can help lake levels rise again, it won't make an immediate impact on the nearly exhausted groundwater supply. Hydrologists estimate it will take hundreds of years for enough rainwater to seep deep underground to refill the aquifer. Water managers say we're in this bind because of tremendous growth in Florida. That's something Sherry Williams can understand.
We have so many people moving to the area all the time, and I guess our natural water supply can't keep up with it.
And it's now Central Florida families who make up the largest chunk of water users, not farmers as it had been for so many years. From showers to washing clothes, on average, Floridians use lots of water, around 160 gallons a day per person. That's 45% more than the average American. Dan Williams is in charge of paying the bills for his family. He sees why water can be easily wasted.
It's relatively inexpensive. If you compare it to the electric bill, the phone bill, the cable bill, it's relatively inexpensive.
In fact, water is one of the cheapest commodities in the world. Tap water costs less than a penny per gallon, according to the American Water Works Association, which is perhaps why so many can afford to use so much, so often, especially on lawns. Sherry and her family tried to limit how much water they use outside.
Knowing that there was a water shortage, and knowing that our sprinkler system's not very efficient, we decided to water as little as possible.
And I try to buy plants that are, drought tolerant and help a little bit. Even just a little bit.
Yet irrigation is becoming increasingly problematic, as one Lake County city found out. Groveland, population 7,000. And in early May, nearly 1 in 5 residents had their water cut off. The reason? Water treatment plant number 5 here in Groveland had shut down. According to Utilities Director Larry Walker, demand for water had massively outstripped supply.
That plant, we put in about 500 gallons per minute into the tank, but our data shows we had going out about 1,500 gallons per minute, about 3 times the amount.
Plant number 5 does not draw any water. It simply holds it and pumps it out to residents living in higher elevation areas. But those residents were using so much water, the tank couldn't cope and shut itself down. That knocked out supply to about 1,200 homes and businesses.
Once it gets down to about 3 feet in the bottom of this tank, it tells these pumps to shut off as a safety mechanism to keep these pumps from burning up. That day, that's the situation we got to. That tank actually got low enough that the pumps here shut off.
According to Walker, the main culprit behind the extra use, sprinklers feeding thirsty lawns.
Because of high demands, we're at a drought, people are irrigating a lot more to meet their HOA requirements, to keep their lawns pretty and green, and the tanks just never recovered.
Water utility managers say more sprinkler use means more stress on the same systems that also supply drinking water. This scenario plays out in communities throughout Central Florida.
I mean, it's not just us. We talk to all of our other sister cities, the surrounding communities, municipalities. We talk with their utility directors, and that the funny thing is, the day we had that situation, I had so many calls that, man, we were close. We had our staff in, we were lowering pressures, we were shutting off valves.
An irrigation system can use up to 6 times more water than regular use in the home. Translation: a family of 2 can use 4,000 gallons of water a day irrigating. In a month, that's up to 24,000 gallons. Plants and grass are the biggest drain on water use. Irrigation usually accounts for half of most people's water bills. The worst offender? The soft green St. Augustine variety of grass. It needs the most watering. It's the most expensive. And yet it's a requirement of many homeowner associations. These HOAs, as they're commonly known, want residents to keep those lawns looking lush and those hedges fluffed up.
Some are more lenient than others. I know we have one residential community here that has that, and they are actually looking at changing their bylaws now to do away with the St. Augustine, to be allowed to put in Bahia or Zoysia or a more drought-tolerant plant.
Florida law requires homeowners associations to allow residents to put in drought-tolerant grass, but only for subdivisions built after 2001. Walker says changes are being made so people in Groveland don't have their water cut off again. But he says the way we think about water has to change too.
You go up north, and in the wintertime, lawns turn brown. People don't irrigate. People don't, But you come to Florida and there's a different perception that you have to have this plush, green, St. Augustine lawn.
Education efforts are underway to change Central Floridians' views on how they use water, especially on their lawns. But some cities and counties are taking it a step further. They've created their own water police. He drives around enforcing the law.
There's one right here.
But Jay Stainer's no policeman.
I don't believe he's on my list for irrigating.
He's a water conservation officer for the city of Oviedo.
See, he's got one patch of sod, but technically, really, that can be watered by hand.
Stainer is always on the lookout for people who are not following water restrictions.
Now see how he's turning it off? Okay, he just turned it off because he sees me out front, so he's gonna come up to the car and we'll get out and talk to him.
This Oviedo resident just got a warning, but repeat offenders can be fined up to $150 and can even have their water cut off. Oviedo is like many other cities and counties in Central Florida. Council members adopted ordinances that require an odd, even, twice-a-week watering policy. Stainer explained this to a violator who lived in an odd-number house who was watering on a Friday.
So if you could just maybe adjust your irrigation system, maybe something happened with a timer or something, and just adjust it back to Wednesdays and Saturdays.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
But no matter where people live in Central Florida, homeowners aren't allowed to water between 10 and 4 on any day, and no more than twice a week. The man who lives in this house planted some new grass, but didn't get permission from the city to water on extra days.
I see you put down some new sod, huh?
Had to.
The reason why I was stopping by is just to remind you of the water restrictions.
Nearby, Bob Rumpf is hand watering his lawn with a hose that has a cutoff valve. He's not breaking any rules, even though it's not his watering day. That's because hand watering gets the okay from the city. It saves a lot of water compared to passive irrigation systems like sprinklers, which people can easily forget to turn off.
I know that we're going to have to conserve water.
Rumpf has lived in Central Florida for decades, so he understands why local and state government impose restrictions on watering.
Our quality of life and everything else depends on water. Water was quite cheap back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. But due to the influx of more people coming into the state and more construction, I feel that we are in a great, big, deep, dried oil well. And we've got to do something about it. And it's just not myself, but we all got to get together and to conserve water as much as possible.
While local governments agree that conserving water is vital, overall their rules are rarely enforced. Oviedo's Jay Stainer is among the few paid water conservation officers on the streets. Orange County, with a population more than 21 times Oviedo's, has a team of just 5 people. These dedicated code enforcement officers can levy fines of up to $1,000, thanks to new Get Tough rules passed by the County Commission. The Toho Water Authority, which covers most of Osceola County, has only 2 water enforcers. They catch 40 to 80 violators a week. After 3 warnings, the offender gets their water shut off. In unincorporated Seminole County, there's virtually no enforcement. The county relies on volunteers to educate violators. Though Stainer says education is important because many people just don't know the rules.
That's why we try to do a lot of educational information when we're out and about.
Overall, water managers say it's an individual's responsibility to follow the rules. And conservation's not the only answer to our future water supply problems. That's why utilities are eyeing new sources to satisfy Central Florida's seemingly limitless demand for water.
The water is where I like to be, and it's certainly the business that I'm in. Obviously, I want to protect it as much as I can.
Dan Seamy is one of the thousands of Central Floridians who live, work, and play near the lazy St. Johns River.
There's a few places where there's a little like a sandy beach, and people go and and just hang out for the day and park their boats and swim a little bit.
The scenic 310-mile-long waterway flows through Sanford and past the Boat Tree Marina where Dan works. Along the river's journey north, Dan says it's enjoyed by many.
It's everything from the fishermen right on up until the person that has a 40 or 50-foot motor yacht, heading out to the coast or just heading up along the river to see the sights, or maybe go up to Blue Springs or on up to Lake George and Silver Glen, or right on up to Jacksonville.
Now, the Central Florida portion of the river is becoming even more important for controversial proposals which could affect cities, counties, and agencies far from its banks.
Well, back in 2000, the year 2000, our regional water supply plan we first made the conclusion that there wasn't going to be enough groundwater to meet all the demands of Central Florida, and that the Central Florida users had to diversify and find other sources. One of those sources was the St. Johns River.
With the blessings of Commissioner, Seminole County's water utility moved quickly to tap the latest frontier for the water supply.
We've been, I guess, for lack of a better explanation, yes, we're out in the lead. And of course, being in the lead, sometimes you gather a little more attention than not being the lead. So yes, we've taken the lead and we are the lead.
Seminole isn't the first to look to the St. Johns River. Sanford, Melbourne, and Cocoa have tapped it in small amounts for years. But Seminole is the first in a new wave of projects prompted solely by the impending water crisis, when the stakes are much higher. It's here at the Yankee Lake plant near Sanford where Seminole County's plan to tap the St. Johns will come to fruition. Behind a chain-link fence, construction is already underway on a project that will clear the way for Seminole County to draw up to 5.5 million gallons of water a day from the river. The plant also sets the stage for an unprecedented water war affecting Floridians from Melbourne to Jacksonville.
It is, for us, really an epic battle. It is really about the future of the river.
Neil Armajon stands guard over the St. Johns like a protective father. He calls himself the St. Johns Riverkeeper and is fighting in court to stop Seminole County's plan to draw water from the river.
People know this is for the future of the St. Johns River. And as St. Johns Riverkeeper, I took an oath to protect this river, and I fully intend to do that to the end.
Armajon says drawing water from the river will not only harm the environment, but will also hurt the economy of Northeast Florida.
Blue-green algae is a serious problem. What we believe, and many other scientists believe, when you take more water out of the river, you concentrate the pollutants, and that's what kicks off algae blooms. There are algae blooms right now in parts of the river. This is a very complicated system, and taking water out is not going to do anything to help its health. One of the biggest industries in Florida is fishing. It's somewhere in the $4 to $5 billion average. We talked about the St. Johns River being an estuary. 80% of the fish on this planet spend all or part of their life in an estuary. When you begin to alter an estuary, you begin to alter those very minute details that make an ecosystem function. That's why the shrimp producers, there's a small group of shrimp fishermen in Jacksonville who are frightened to death about this.
The St. Johns Water Management District is conducting a study on the long-term effects of taking water from the river. It won't be completed for 18 months. That's a problem for Central Florida's neighbors to the north. The city of Jacksonville and St. Johns County joined the legal battle to stop Seminole County from drawing water from the river until the full impacts are studied. Court records show other Central Florida cities have entered the legal fray as well, pitting Northeast and Central Florida against each other. On the other side of the fray, the Toho Water Authority, Osceola County, the city of Sanford, and the city of Cocoa are all supporting Seminole County's plan because they have their own plans to tap different parts of the St. Johns and other rivers and lakes in Central Florida.
The same discussion is going on in the Kissimmee River Valley right now. How much water can the Kissimmee River surrender and yet not upset or sidetrack a $500 million restoration project that's going on in the Kissimmee right now?
Future water deals with Seminole may also be on the line.
Other districts, other political areas, other counties, other communities have approached us about utilizing our site and our location, since we have access to the river, as potentially a regional source. And we've been investigating that.
Seminole County is in talks to make it happen, though no deals have been signed yet. But the website sharedwaterworks.com has already been set up. It explains that the Yankee Lake plant's strategic location is in close proximity to their thirsty neighbors in Orange, Lake, and Volusia counties, all of which worries riverkeeper Neil Armijon. He's afraid Seminole County's current, relatively small, 5.5 million gallons a day request is just a drop in the bucket in terms of county and regional long-range plans.
And if anybody thinks these governments are going to spend billions of dollars to build these systems, and then one day we discover they have ruined these rivers, they're going to tell people that's it? No way. If this starts, it's not going to stop.
State regulators have publicly said that 262 million gallons a day can be siphoned from the St. Johns and the adjoining Ocklawaha River. Seminole County's utility stands to gain millions if its regional water supply plan is seen through.
We're an enterprise fund. An enterprise fund in government is operated just like a business. We only exist because of the revenue and we take in from the service we provide. So we're providing water supply, we're providing wastewater collection and treatment, and we're charging for that. That charge pays for all the individuals that are involved in operating the system, and it also pays for the systems. So that's how we operate. None of it comes from the tax base.
This is about money and power. Believe me, Seminole County stands to gain a hell of a lot of money from this. And water is power. You control a utility company, then you have everybody at your mercy. The risk to the economic well-being of Northeast Florida is incredible, and yet no one, and let me repeat that, no one is looking at this. This is all about a politically expedient answer. You know, what does Seminole County need? They need water. Well, we have the river, let's just take it.
Well, the only thing Yankee Lake is doing is seeking an alternative source of water to us that passes through our county. That's a local source, and according to Local First, which is Florida law, local users first, we have a right to that water, and we think we should be able to use it.
The dispute should be settled in October by a judge in Tallahassee, though considering the $120 million Seminole County is spending on the water plant, it seems pretty confident of success. But business operators like Dan say local and state government should take a step back and look at the big picture and the importance of the St. Johns River.
It's not only important to our business, I think it's important to the state. I mean, we're in the travel and tourism business is what the state of Florida is in, and you know, this is all part of the tourism aspect of it, but the quality of life issue too, where people use it every day. I know at some point, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that at some point, if you overtax a resource, it's going to start to disappear. It doesn't make any difference what it is, whether it's oil, water, land, you know, forest, you know, nature can only produce so much for you.
Yet, Central Florida continues to push nature to its limits. Next Thursday on WMFE TV's This Week.
Development needs to be slowed down, stopped, until they can figure out a different way.
Part 2 of our in-depth report, The Price of Our Thirst.
Each and every single household, each and every office building that goes in has a demand, and there is limited supply, as we're beginning to find out.
More fresh water can be produced, but at what cost?
People need to pay more for water if we're going to continue to grow the way we have in the past.
And Central Floridians will likely pay 6 times more for purified seawater.
You'll spend all that money dragging that water clear over here from the ocean? Ha. I just laugh at that.
This, as the backlash over the water supply affects a bottling company's plans in Lake County.
The people are very upset. They don't want the withdrawals because of the water issues we're faced with.
There are questions about where Central Florida's water will come from in the future. But one thing is certain.
It affects us all, both financially and both from the environmental perspective too.
Join us for part 2 of our in-depth report, The Price of Our Thirst, next Thursday at 8:30 on WMFE TV. WMFE's in-depth coverage continues online. Log on to WMFE.org/thisweek to watch this program again. On the website, you can also listen to water supply stories from the journalists at 90.7 WMFE FM. They put the fight over the St. Johns River into deeper perspective in a series of reports. That's on WMFE.org/thisweek.